Hello friends, welcome to the Crisc, that is certified in the Risk and Information System Control, Part 5, Domain 2, that is of IT Risk Assessment. Friends, in this part, we'll be covering about the following topics. The first will be the cause analysis implementation. Second on the list will be the risk scenario development. Third, we'll discuss about the benefit of the using risk scenario. Fourth, we'll discuss about the different risk scenarios, techniques, and main focus areas. And at last, we'll discuss about the fair model and harm model. Friends, I'm absolutely thrilled to have you as a part of our growing YouTube community. Friends, your decisions to hit the subscribe button means a world to us, right? I personally wanted to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude for you all people. Please do like and comment, and your subscription to my channel serve as a tremendous motivation for me, right? To keep creating the content that you love. Friends, my goal is always have been to provide the value information, and having you on board makes my journey even more exciting, right? Friends, remember your feedback is invaluable to me. Feel free to share your thoughts, suggestions, and ideas in the comment section. I'm here to create a community where we can learn, grow, and have a meaningful interaction. Right? Friends, before wasting time, let's move to the first topic, that is root cause analysis implementation. Friends, we all know that the word root cause analysis, right? Root cause analysis is a way to figure out why things go wrong. Understood? So it helps us to learn from the mistakes and the problems. So instead of just fixing the surface issue, we dig deeper to find the real reason behind what happened. This means the reason, which we call the root cause, understood, need to be fixed to prevent the same problem from happening again and again. For instance, if we find out that employees in a company are not following the rules, instead of just telling them to follow the rules better, we should look into why they are not following the rules. Understood? So it could be that the rules are too old fashioned, or we can say broken, or don't match with the company's goal. So we would need to fix the rules, not just scold the employees, right? One way to do this analysis is by doing the something called pre-mortem, in which we'll understand, right? So friends, as we have discussed, that the root cause analysis is a diagnostic technique, understood, that identify the causes of event so that the lessons may be drawn from outcomes, right? Friends, the measures taken by a company in response to risk are frequently based on the lessons learned from prior incident. Rather than reacting as symptoms of the problem, as we have discussed, a wise risk practitioner investigate the root cause of an occurrence to determine the circumstances and variable that contributed to the event. So these underlying factors which constitute the root core, understood, for an issue are conditions that must be addressed in order to prevent the problem from reoccurring. For example, if a review of a business process reveals that users are not following the procedures and the policies in place, the risk practitioner should investigate why the users are not following the process, because proposing that the procedures be enforced, it is possible that technique is outmoded. Understood? As we have discussed. So the friends, as we know that one way to do this analysis is by doing something called pre-mortem, right? What is pre-mortem? Friends, a pre-mortem is one method of doing root cause analysis, right? It is a guided workshop in which the group is advised to pretend that the project has failed and analyzes why it has failed. So when properly supported, the simple but critical cognitive impact of answering the question in this manner rather than why it could fail, right? It can result in intelligence, collaborative, and important perspective on the risk. In many circumstances, a risk event is the consequence of numerous factors acting in concert to produce what appeared to be a single result, right? A risk practitioner can utilize root cause analysis to detect co-occurring occurrences that cannot be attributed to a single common source. Understood? So in this scenario, we can say that the solution consists of more than a single response activity or control implementation. Right? Moving on further, let's discuss about the risk scenario development. Right? Friends, a risk scenario is like a story about something that might go wrong or right for a company. So this thing could happen unexpectedly and can affect whether the company succeed or faces problems. Understood? So making up these scenario help us think about the risk and identify them better. So these stories also help us to understand how risk might impact the company's goal. Right? For example, think of a new product a company want to launch, right? So they could imagine a scenario where the product becomes super popular and they make a lot of money, right? Or they might imagine a scenario where the product has a big problem and they loses out of money, negative outcome, right? So these scenarios help them to plan for what might happen. Understood? So similarly, a risk scenario is a description of potential hazard event, the occurrence of which will have an unpredictable influence on the attainment of the enterprise's objectives, which might be positive or negative. Understood? So friends, the creation of the risk scenario gives a method of conceptualizing risk that might assist in the risk identification process. Right? Scenarios are used to describe the risk in connection to corporate objectives or activities, right, that are influenced by event, giving them excellent foundation for quantitative risk assessment. Right? Each detected risk should be incorporated in one or more scenarios, and each scenario should be based on a risk that has been recognized. Right? Hope you have understood the risk scenario development. Okay, let's move to the furthermore on the risk development scenario development. Right? Friends, risk scenarios are like stories, right? We make to think about what might go wrong. Understood? So we imagine a possible problem like a system breaking or losing important stuff. Then we can see how this problem could affect the different part of a business. So these problems like computer crash or a big storm can mess up how a company work. It is actually to focus on the real risk that could actually happen, right? For instance, let's say a company sells gadget, right? They could make a scenario where no one wants a gadget anymore and they can't sell anything, right? Market shift risk. Or they could imagine a new leader making rules that hurt their business, right? This scenario help them to prepare themselves, right? So making up scenarios just from our mind need new ideas, right? Talking with others and checking facts. But sometimes we can use past problem to help make these stories, right? So we need to learn from the past to stop the bad things from happening again and again. Yet we also need to think about new problems that haven't happened yet but could happen in future, right? So friends, risk scenarios created solely on imagination need innovation or consideration and consultation and inquiry. So previous incident may be utilized as a foundation for risk scenario with significantly less work invested into their formulation, right? So while risk scenario based on past occurrence should be thoroughly investigated to ensure that similar circumstances do not reoccur in ways that might have been prevented, or we can say exclusive reliance and concentration should be balanced to evaluate those scenarios that have not occurred but have the potential of occurrence. Understood? Right? Friends, moving further ahead, let's discuss about the risk scenario approaches, right? In this risk scenario approaches, as we have discussed, there are two types of approaches. First is the top-down approach, right? Friends, top-down approach to scenario building is focused on understanding the company goal, right? And uh, and how a risk event may impact those goal attainment, right? Friends, the risk practitioner uses this model to seek for the result of event that may jeopardize the corporate goal stated by top management. Understood? Friends, various scenarios are created to allow the company to investigate the link between the risk event and the business goal, allowing the impact of the risk event to be quantified. Understood? So similarly, senior management may be educated and involved in the risk understanding and measurement by the directly linking a risk scenario to the company. Okay, so because it considered both IT and non-IT related event, the top-down method is well suited to a general risk management throughout the firm. Right? Friends, because this strategy is more generic, it is simpler to obtain management buy-in even if management is often uninterested in IT. Right? So we can say that the top-down strategy also addresses the objectives that senior managers have selected as vital to them. Right? Moving, let's see the bottom-up approach. Hope you have understood the top-down approach. Okay, friends, let's see the bottom-up approach. Friends, in bottom-up risk scenario, development is focused on characterizing the risk event that are particular to the distinct enterprise. Right? Often hypothetical situations envisioned by the individuals executing job duties in specific process. Right? Friends, the risk practitioner and the assessment team begin with one or more general risk scenario, then refine them to match the need of their own company, including the development of complicated scenario to account or concurrent occurrences. Right? Moving further ahead, let's discuss about the benefits of using the risk scenario. Friends, risk scenario promote risk management communication by developing a story that can motivate the individual to act. Right? The use of the risk scenario may assist the risk team understand and convey the risk to business process owners and other stakeholders, which can improve risk management efforts. Furthermore, a well-developed scenario delivers a realistic and practical picture of the risk that is better aligned with the enterprise business objectives, past events, and upcoming threats, than reviewing a generically applicable standards or catalog of controls. So these advantages make risk scenario useful for obtaining and structuring information for the following phases in the risk management process, such as to facilitate communication, gathering information, inspire action, framing information, and realistic view of risk. Right? Friends, let's discuss about the risk scenario techniques and the main focus areas. Friends, the first, that maintaining currency of the risk scenario and the risk factor. Right? As a summary guidance, we can understand that the risk factor and the enterprise change over time. Right? Hence, scenario will change over time, over the course of a project or over the evolution of technology. Let's understand. Friends, the risk variables and the enterprise vary over time, right? Hence, risk scenario will alter over time throughout the course of a project or as a technology evolves. For example, the risk function must design a review timetable and a chief information officer must collaborate with the business lines to assess and update scenarios for relevance and importance. The frequency of this exercise is determined by enterprise total risk profile and should be performed at least once a year or whenever significant changes occurs. Understood? Similarly, coming to the next, the issues are use generic scenario as a starting point and build more detail where and when required. It summarizes is the one technique of keeping the number of scenario manageable is to propagate a standard set of generic scenarios throughout the enterprise and develop more detailed and relevant scenario when required and warranted by the risk profile only at lower level. Let's understand it. Friends, it's a one method for keeping the number of scenarios reasonable is to spread a common set of generic scenario throughout the company and build more specific and relevant scenario only at the lower level when necessary and warranted by a risk profile. Because they may obscure the particular circumstances or be misleading when looking at a risk response, the assumptions established for grouping or generalizing should be thoroughly understood by everybody and well recorded. Understood? Let's understand it with the help of example. If the term insider threat, right, is not defined clearly inside a scenario, it may be unclear if the danger covers both privileged and non-privileged insiders. So when attempting to understand the frequency and effect of occurrence as well as mitigation strategies, the distinction between these parts of a scenario might be crucial. Right? Moving further ahead, let's discuss now the next focus area is the number of scenarios should be representative and reflect the business reality and complexity. It summarizes that the risk management help to deal with the enormous complexity of IT environment by prioritizing potential action according to its value in reducing the risk. Let's understand it. Friends, in this the risk management assists in dealing with the tremendous complexity of IT environment by prioritizing alternative action based on their usefulness in the risk reduction. Friends, risk management is about decreasing complexity, not creating it. Hence, another reason to limit the number of risk scenario to a reasonable level, right? However, the amount of possibility kept must still appropriately reflect the business realities and complexities. Right? Next in the line is number 4, that is the risk taxonomy should reflect business reality and complexity. It summarizes that there should be a sufficient number of risk scenario scales reflecting the complexity of the enterprise and the extent of exposure to which the enterprise is subject. Right? Let's understand it. Friends, there should be a sufficient number of risk scenario scale to represent the enterprise complexity and the breadth of the enterprise exposure. So to achieve the consistent utilization, potential scales should be coordinated and shared throughout the company. Right? Let's moving further ahead. The next in the line, the focus area is use generic risk scenario structure to simplify the risk reporting. It summarizes that similarly for the risk reporting purpose, entities should not report on all specific and detailed scenarios, but could do so by using the generic risk structure. Let's understand it. It says that similarly, companies should not report on all the particular and detailed scenarios for risk reporting reason, but can do so by using the generic risk framework, right? For example, a company may have a selected generic scenario, right? Like project quality, translated into 5 scenarios for its key projects, then conducted risk analysis for each of the scenario, aggregated or summarized the result and reported back using the generic scenario header, that is project quality, Understood? Moving further ahead, the focus area, it shows that the ensure adequate people and skill requirement for developing relevant risk scenario, right? So it guided like developing a manageable and relevant set of risk scenario. It requires first expertise and experience to not overlook relevant scenarios and not be drawn into the higher unrealistic or irrelevant scenarios. Next, a thorough understanding of the environment. And next point, it will be the brainstorming oblique stroke workshop approach. So let's understand it. Friends, in this, the creating a manageable and the appropriate selection of the risk scenarios necessitates the following expertise and experience in order to avoid overlooking unrelevant situations and being lured into the excessively unrealistic or irrelevant scenarios. So while it is crucial to avoid scenarios that are unrealistic or unimportant in order to efficiently utilize limited resources, some attention should be devoted to events that are exceedingly uncommon and unpredictable, yet might have a disaster influence on the company. So this encompasses the IT environment such as infrastructure, applications, application dependencies, and infrastructure component, the total business environment and the understanding of how and which IT environment serve the business environment in order to comprehend the business effect. Friends, in this the senior management which has a decision making authority, right? Business management which has the best insight on the business effect, or IT which understand what may go wrong with the IT and the risk management, which can moderate and frame the argument among the other parties, right? Similarly, a brainstorming or workshop technique is typically beneficial in the process of producing scenarios when a high level evaluation is necessary to decrease the number of scenarios to a manageable but relevant and representative number, right? Moving further ahead, the next in the chart, the issues we will discuss about the use of the risk scenario building process to obtain buy-in. So it summarizes that the risk analysis is more than merely an analytical exercise, right, performed by the risk analyst. So obtaining organizational buy-in from the corporate entities and the business lines, risk management or IT or finances or compliance and other partners is a key additional advantage of a scenario analysis. So obtaining this buy-in is why scenario analysis should be well facilitated process, right? Next, the issues: deduce complex scenario from a simple scenario by showing impact and dependency. Friends, once generated, simple scenario should be fine-tuned into a more complicated scenario that exhibit cascading or coincidental consequences and depict interdependence. For example, a catastrophic hardware failure scenario can be mixed with a failure disaster recovery plan scenario. A large software failure scenario can cause database corruption, which, when combined with poor data management backup, can have catastrophic repercussion or at least effect of different scale than a software failure alone, right? Similarly, a large external incident scenario might lead to an inward difference scenario. Understood? Moving next. Next in the chart is the consider systemic and contagious risk. Friends, systemic is something happens with a major business partner that affect a big number of business in a certain areas or sectors. So a countrywide air traffic control system that goes down for a lengthy period of time, just we can say 6 hours, has a substantial impact on air traffic. right? Similarly, what is contagious risk? Contagious risk, even that occurs at a multiple of the enterprise businesses partners in a short period of time. A clearinghouse, for example, can be perfectly prepared for any type of emergency by having extremely sophisticated disaster recovery system in place. But when a crisis occurs, it discovers that no transactions are being delivered by its suppliers and is temporarily out of business. Understood? Discussing the next issues. The next and the last in our chart is use of the scenario building to increase awareness for risk detection. Friends, scenario planning also aids in addressing the issue of detectability, avoiding a situation in which an organization does not know what it does not know, right? The collaborative approach to scenario building aids in identifying risk that the company would not have recognized it was exposed to, right? And hence would never have considered implementing countermeasures, right? Friends, risk analysis evaluate the frequency and impact of the scenario when the entire set of the risk item is recognized during scenario production, right? Somewhat it can we can think about, will the enterprise ever realize that the risk scenario has manifested? For example, right? Will the enterprise detect anything is wrong and respond appropriately? Friends, creating scenario and thinking imaginatively about what may go wrong will inevitably arise and perhaps elicit an answer to the subject of detectability, right? So the detection of situation consists of two steps, right? Visibility and recognition. The company must be able to detect anything that is going wrong and must be able to identify an observed occurrence as anything bad. Similarly, business continuity team usually work from the scenario that are similar to those developed for risk identification and assessment. And the risk practitioner may find it beneficial to interact with these teams to avoid unnecessary duplication of effort. Friends, reviewing audit report, or we can say interviewing end users or IT specialists and observing business processes or operations in action are all effective places to start when developing the scenario. Right? Moving further ahead, let's analyze the next topic will be the analyzing the risk scenario. Right? Friends, risk scenarios are created and utilized to identify and characterize probable risk occurrence, right, during the risk identification. So these risk scenario may be used to interact with the company and acquire the information needed to assess the possible or probable impact of a risk event, even if it occurs, right? So let's discuss the first FAIR model, that is the factor analysis of information risk model, which breaks down the key component of the risk into a smaller or more manageable component that may be studied, right? FAIR is an acronym that stands for factor analysis of information risk, right? It is a practical risk management approach that tries to investigate and quantify threat to a company's operational and cybersecurity infrastructure, right? So the FAIR model, which is compliant with international standard, was established in 2005 by Jack Jones, who is now the chairman of the FAIR Institute and is widely regarded as a leading value at risk framework for operational risk and cybersecurity. Friends, the Open Group is a well-known multinational collaboration that uses the information technology standard to achieve various corporate aims and objectives. So the open group upholds the open fair standard, the only widely acknowledged quantitative technique for assessing the cybersecurity risk, right? So furthermore, the fair approach is widely acknowledged and can be used to any and all businesses that deal with the both perceived and tangible hazard, right? So friends, the FAIR model goal is to give a measurable and numerical view on how cyber-based dangers might influence an organization on a variety of level. On the other hand, let's discuss about the harm model, right? Harm model entire methodology built on an open fair model, right? It accounts for the loss of magnitude at a discrete level. In this, the factors in control objective maturity as a method to account for potential reduction in overall loss magnitude estimations, right? Friends, here we come to the end of today's topic, that is end of part 5 domain 2 presented by Let's Learn series. Please do subscribe to our channel and thank you for watching. Thank you friends.